Alright, hello and welcome back to another deck profile. This time, we're taking a look at Invoked. Now, the biggest thing I'm going to get out at the beginning of the video here is this is what I'm personally playing in real life. So, it's a little bit suboptimal, but I added the cards that really should be changed down at the bottom. So, the biggest change is the absence of Ash Blossom. If you have these, go ahead and swap the Veilers out for these. It's a lot better and gives you access to Purgatrio, and Veiler is a decent card, and being a light, giving you more targets for Mechaba is good, but Ash is just overall better and would have won me more games. And a third Mechaba because there's a lot of awkward situations with only two where you kind of really have to play in interesting ways to protect your second Mechaba, just because not being able to make another one, you're limited to a lot of worse options. He's just the strongest besides Raging, which obviously we don't have much access to, Wind being one of the weaker types. But anyway, that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into it here. So starting off, we have 3 copies of Alistair in the Invoker. Normal summon him, search for Invocation. Invocation adds him back to the hand. It's the whole loop thing. He's also a hand trap where you ditch him and give your fusions 1000 attack and defense. Never do that if he's the only card in your, if he's the only copy in your hand. Never ditch him for Mechaba unless it's absolutely necessary if he's the only copy in your hand. The amount of players I see online who go ahead and ditch this to save their Mechaba and then can't make another one when you out it because they ditched their Alistair is just insane. You want to hang on to the one copy in hand like it's like that's what determines the duel basically. And there's a few situations where, like, say, they have, like, that if you stop them, you win the game, you can go ahead and ditch it, but you always want to keep a copy in hand. Next up, we have 3 copies of Ghost Ogre. Overall, a great card and a target for Mechaba as well. Effect Veiler, all around a very decent card and a target for Mechaba as well. 1 Blue Boy to search off of a Secrets if we don't have an Alistair normal summon. 2 copies of some artifact cards right here. We have 1 Scythe and 1 Moraltalk. Maybe another Scythe would be something you could throw in, just so the Sanctum is live more. I do have some times where I'll open one of these and can't go for my preferred option, but I do like to keep them only at 1 so that I draw them less. However, drawing them isn't terrible because we actually are running Call of the Haunted, so you can actually bring them back on your opponent's turn if you discard them for Invocation, and go ahead and also make some rank 5 plays with them and Thunder Dragon as well. This card, it obviously doesn't do much. You just discard to add 2 more copies of itself, but it prevents you from having to discard hand traps for Mechaba or having to discard, well, or an Alistair or things like that. It lets you discard something that's really not doing anything. It puts a target in gray for Invocation, so you don't have to ditch a hand trap to make your Mechaba. And overall, I think it adds a little bit that the deck was missing in that pure discard fodder for 2 turns and that light target engrave. And as a level 5, it has some interesting synergy with the artifacts being able to make Pallades, which has come up a few times, and is obviously a very strong card. So I definitely like having the 3 Thunder Dragons. It's obviously not a great card, but you could also run a copy of Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon because that does come up. And I've been tempted to run one if the X-Check space wasn't so damn tight. If Scapegoat gets hit on the ban list, I will probably be running a Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon for that spicy meme. But anyway, moving on to the spells, we have 2 copies of Invocation, 3 copies of Meltdown, and 2 copies of Terraforming. Most players run 3 Terraforming, and some players run 3 Invocation as well, especially if they're playing Desires. But I'm not playing Desires, and 3-2 is the ratio I always like to stick with in Terraforming. Now, in total, that gives us 8 copies of Alistair. You're still going to have games where you don't see him. So I took it 1 step back from the 3 Terraforming, so instead of seeing, 9 Alistairs, I'm only seeing 8 Alistairs, I guess. It's just kind of my preferred ratio, really, but Invocation is a fusion spell that can act as a polymerization for any fusion monster. You can banish from the graveyard as well, or field for materials and discard from the hand, and it also shuffles into the deck to add back a banished Alistair from grave. So another little note is you always want to go ahead and if you make a second fusion in that turn using another Invocation you have in hand or a double summon or something like that, you always want to go ahead and discard the Alistair first because you want to get him banished so you can add him back off of Invocation. In some decks, and in this deck before, I actually have run Fairy Tale Snow as well in more combo-oriented builds. under Master Rule 3 because I could banish Alistair to make Invocation Engrave live once again. But obviously the loop here is you use your Alistair, you go ahead if he's in the field or grave, you banish him, Invocation during your main phase 2 or whenever, or after you fusion, goes ahead, adds him back to the hand, and you have your loop of 1 fusion a turn there. Now Magical Meltdown is interesting. It adds Alistair on activation, but also has these effects. The activation of your cards and effects that include an effect that fusion summons a fusion monster cannot be negated, so prevents things like Solemn Warning on your Invocation. Also, your opponent's cards and effects cannot be activated when a monster is fusion summoned this way, so no Torrential Tribute, Bottomless, things like that. And that was actually good with Invoked Raging most of all, because he could actually chain to his own summon and your opponent can respond to it because it's still kind of like in the window of that summon. But obviously with Raging having less access, that's not super important. Moving on from there, we have just the finishing touches of the spellbook engine in quotes there, just the obviously draw a card in Knowledge and Secrets, hopefully being able to resolve it twice, 3 copies of Scapegoat just being an insane card, 2 copies of Cyclone for back row removal, and on the traps we have 3 copies of Sanctum. Scythe can just end turns and Morale Attack is overall a strong card, as well as inhibiting rank 5 plays despite the fact that it does interfere with Scapegoats, and that's something to watch out for, is you can't resolve both in the same turn, obviously on your opponent's turn there. And that's something I messed up a few times when I was starting to play this deck again. But we also have Call of the Haunted, which I think is more necessary when you only have 2 Mechaba like I do, just because it lets you kind of recycle another one in grave, giving you kind of like 2.5 Mechabas, so you can worry less about playing Protect the Castle on your second Mechaba. It also gives you the access for rank 5 plays, and just lets you push for more damage. And round things off, we have the Solemn Brigade there. The extra deck is nothing special, just 2 Mechaba, obviously preferably 3, and then the rest of the fusions that are relevant or come up more, and then just some Scapegoat stuff in Borreload, Ningirsu, Decode Talker. Gaia Saber is necessary because if you have a fusion in your extra monster zone, you actually kind of have to go ahead and dump into him first, just because you'd either have to go and do a proxy or something like that, and he's just kind of the best one to go into. If you already have a fusion in your zone, then you can normal summon an Alistair, still make a Ningirsu from there, and you can still go off. So he's necessary just to dump some monsters into. Proxy Dragon, a Underclock Taker, which I'm mixed on this card because the attack boost, or the attack loss, especially in combination with Purgatrio, is an OTK machine, but it's just a 1000 body that sits on the field. But overall, it's still a pretty good card. And then the beginnings of the Scapegoat package in Mrs. Radiant and Link Spider, which is also relevant because it gives you access to Potato down here, which is just a big body. Obviously, he can go up to 4k essentially instantly with the Invocation adding back Alistair, and if you have multiples, he can get up to 5k, 6k, and help you push for game essentially. And then rounding things off, we have the 1 Pallades as well. So the deck overall, playstyle wise, is really just get out your Mechaba, sit on some back row, and try to control the game state and win from there. Obviously, most of the stuff in the deck is just power cards or consistency cards. You just want to go ahead and set up a Mechaba with, some 2 Thunder Dragons in hand, a Sanctum, a Scapegoat, some strikes or warnings or things like that. So, really not much to explain there. It isn't the most complex playstyle of decks, although there is some decisions to be made, especially with Scapegoat, how to push for game that turn, when to give up your fusions, when to keep them, when to negate things like that nature, more general Yu-Gi-Oh knowledge mixed in with the playstyle of this deck essentially. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into some replays here. Getting into our first one here, we're up against Infernoids and we will be going second. As you can see, he didn't have, he had a decent setup here. He has the Void Banishment, he has the Imagination, which is good for the next turn. He has a Patty and a Deviati and a Monster Reborn. And obviously, you'd set up with the Void Feast to go ahead and just set up the double negate from there. But we have a Ghost Ogre, so it's going to be a different story. He'll go for Vanishment, we'll obviously Ghost Ogre, and make him basically go -2 there, although discarding Deviati really means nothing. Now in our turn, we obviously already have Meltdown, so we'll go ahead and Secrets, do that first to kind of feel out for an Ash. Go for Alistair, we obviously already have a Light Engrave, we'll get a Thunder Dragon, we'll draw into a Morale Talk, which does suck to draw into, but we have a Call of the Haunted set, so we can use it on our opponent's turn, which will become relevant here. And we have a Pop on our opponent's turn, a Negate, and a Strike, which is pretty good. He'll go for Monster Reborn and bring back our Ghost Ogre, obviously Morale Talk not being able to trigger on his turn. So that one hurts a little bit there, but he does have, because the Ghost Ogre can activate on field, so he does have the free kind of pop in Ghost Ogre there. He'll go for Patty and target a back row. We'll just go ahead and negate that to kind of keep him from getting Infernoids in grave there, and keep our Call the Haunted, which will become very relevant because it lets us pop Imagination before that can go off, obviously letting him summon Tierra and fill up his grave. And really at that point, there wasn't much left he could do. Obviously, if he top decks into anything else, essentially he can Void Banishment, but we have, you know, a Mechaba there. We've been Ghost Ogreing the whole thing, so we have a Strike, so we're set up pretty well there. And that's basically how this deck functions. Is in a perfect world, you control the game state, you stop your opponent from getting their entire play off, you hold them to more suboptimal plays, and just try to maintain your board from there. In this one, we're going first, and we're actually up against Trickstar Mech Knights, which I guess helps you out bigger monsters. Obviously, Trickstars themselves not being able to out anything over, you know, like 1800, besides Scapegoat or Eater of Millions, but I guess it's an interesting idea there. As you can see down here, we open Secrets, Blue Boy, Scapegoat, you know, we have an Ogre, so we're set up fairly well. So obviously we'll Meltdown, we'll go ahead, normal summon him, grab the Invocation, grab the Knowledge, draw into some stuff from there. We'll get a Thunder Dragon, which will give us some advantage in hand, as well as a Light in grave, letting us hold on to our Ghost Ogre there. And then we can go ahead and set up with a Mechaba, an Ogre, and a Scapegoat. Now, summon the Purple Nightfall and Big Scoots, which is his official name, obviously, and go Battle Phase, and then kind of, I'm sorry, I can't talk today. But he'll go Battle Phase, and then obviously attempt to crash with Mech Knight Purple Nightfall here, leaving us with a Mechaba with no negates. Now, since I essentially have two Alistairs in hand here, I am going to go ahead and ditch one to keep my Mechaba on the field, letting me negate something in main phase 2. Now we'll go for Light Stage and Candina. We'll go ahead and use Mechaba on the Candina. Obviously he has a Lycros in hand. I didn't know that, but I was kind of assuming he would, which will let him tag out and it won't get banished, but it'll stop him from searching a Reincarnation or anything like that, which against this deck is pretty much a death sentence. And then he'll chain Ogre and hit our Mechaba there, but again we have Scapegoat, so that's not really a problem. But yes, Trickstars, them getting Reincarnation is more of a death sentence for this deck because it essentially lets them go ahead and just snipe your Invocation, which is really brutal, especially only running 2 of them. But even at 3, they can just snipe the one you add, and you're a little bit screwed from there. And we'll actually top deck into one and prevent him from getting any back row even after the Desires there. So we'll go into Borlo here because we can take Big Scoots. We could even move him out of a zone if that's something that we wanted to do there if we had the 3rd Mechaba. We'll just go ahead and normal summon Blue Boy since we already have an Alistair in grave there. Since we already have an engraved to make our Invocation there, take Big Scoots, hit him with his own monster, and our Mechaba and the Blue Boy, and then main phase 2 after getting that 500 and go for some extra draws there, add back the Alistair, and we have triple Alistair, Ghost Ogre, and Solemn Warning. Now here he'll Candina. I'll actually go ahead and save the Solemn Warning for something else, say another one of the Invoked, or not Invoked, but Mech Knight monsters, because I can't obviously hit them with a Mechaba, and obviously I don't care if he gets a 1600 on board, so we can prevent him from swinging over anything with the Warning and still prevent the Candina from going off there. And again, just another prime example of this deck being able to control the game state and really do what it wants to do. And for our last one here, something a little bit different. This was actually a different build of the deck that I was working on a little bit. I was just out one day and I built it on Wikipedia, but obviously with Guitar, you know, discarding the special mics here, giving you the double normal summon and then being wins, seems really good, but then I kind of remembered he was a Pendulum and that I couldn't just banish him from grave to fuse for Raging, but I did come up with a little bit of a cheeky combo if you opened a Guitars and another Wind monster in hand. So we'll go ahead and go through that here. So we'll obviously grab the Alistair, Thunder Dragon for some more deck thinning, go ahead, normal summon the Alistair, grab the Invocation, and he will go for Guitars into Mics, giving us a double normal summon, even if we go ahead and get it off the field there. So we can actually link into Underclock Taker, which points down, so we can go ahead and make a Rage in there. Go ahead into Alistair, grab another Invocation, go ahead and make a Mechaba and a Decode Talker there. So overall, a fairly decent board. We have a Decode Talker, which I make Raging first, obviously because we have to, but also I'd honestly rather tribute the Mechaba because there's more of those, and Raging is actually stronger just because you don't have to give anything up for him, especially in this build where if we had an open Thunder Dragon, we'd only have 2 cards in hand there. And then we have a Veiler, a Book of Moon, a Monster Negation, and a Targeting Prevention, so it's pretty strong overall, and we're obviously up against a going first deck here. So end phase, we'll just go ahead and book the Altergeist thing. so we don't have to worry about it. Normal summon the Alistair, try to keep going off from there, although we will hit with the Solemn Strike. Now he'll go ahead and flip Protocol and go for Multi-Faker here, but Protocol only prevents the activations from being negated on the field, so we can actually go ahead and stop the Multi-Faker since it's still in hand there. And then we can just proceed with the battle phase from there and put a pretty decent amount of damage on board. Obviously, if he hadn't striked us, we would have probably been able to have killed him there. Now he'll go for Duality, and I believe he'll actually grab a Melee-Seek there, so we'll go ahead and try to swing directly with that. We'll use Ragin, which will go ahead and bait out the Protocol, but again, we have enough resources we can give up a Ragin and still be fine. Now he'll search this up here, the Conquiri, and he has Multi-Faker, so, he's not set up terribly here. But again, we still have a Mechaba on field. We're actually going to be able to make another one here, so it's not looking too bad for us. So we'll actually draw into a trap card, which is pretty relevant here, make a second Mechaba. So we can go a battle phase, whenever he goes Alter gets Materialization, we can actually go ahead and negate that by discarding the Judgment there. Obviously, he'll use Protocol, which hits the Mechaba, but we still have damage. We still have enough for game on board there. He'll go ahead and use the Protocol, or he used the Protocol to stop the Mechaba. He'll go ahead and bring back the Siliquitus, whatever, off of the Materialization, and then he'll go ahead and summon the Multi-Faker from there. Once again, we'll negate with Mechaba, and he can obviously bounce with this card here, but again, we still have enough on board that we can go ahead and push for game there. So I was a little bit sloppy with the use of resources, but I knew that we could go ahead and get game there. So we just went ahead and kind of pushed through it, just brute forced our way, negation-wise, to victory there. But yes, that was our look at Invoked. I'm really liking this deck right now because it is expensive. It's not a budget deck, but I actually got it whenever it came out. I tried to build it day one and slowly got the pieces over time when it was cheaper. So I've actually had this deck for a while, and I'm really enjoying playing it again because it's a contender. It's not the best, I won't have a high chance of topping any regionals or topping a YCS or anything, obviously with Mech Knight Invoked being the preferred build right now, but it can compete. I have a chance, and that's something that I am really just needing right now with a bit of a Yu-Gi-Oh burnout where Dark Magician, it just sucked where I was starting to just lose the deck, not by anything I was doing, but just by the deck's own faults and playing bad decks all the time, obviously with the worst deck of all time series, and this was just a well-needed break of something that can really hold its own and is a very good deck overall. But anyway, usual plugs at the end of the episodes, link to my Twitter where I tweet about videos and some Yu-Gi-Oh stuff occasionally. I'll try to get better on that. I haven't been tweeting recently, but I'll tweet this one out. Yeah, well, we'll start again now. We'll try to get more consistent on that. I'll link to my Discord as well where we chill, hang out, talk about Yu-Gi-Oh, have some duels here and there, that general gubbins, and link to my Patreon as well, where if you appreciate the time and effort that goes into editing and recording these videos and all that, especially the worst deck of all time series being a very intensive series there, you can support me there. You'll get some extra duels that don't make it into the final cuts of some deck profiles and videos here, but no pressure to support, no usual content will be gated off. It's just, if you have a little extra to give, it would be greatly appreciated, but just watching is enough for me, so thank you for watching, and I'll see you later. I don't know why I did that voice at the end there. I'm just gonna go.